Okay, now we are going live. Are we there? Ruchira? Yes, I think we are there now.
Okay, hi.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another coffee conversation. So today we are dealing with a very different topic. Actually, it's not different. It is a very basic topic which everybody should talk about. But the problem is we do not talk about that topic. We do not consider it as important as our curriculum or science or maths education. But this is a very, very important topic. Trust me. So we have with us Dr. Ritumbra Manuvie, who is our expert in the theme education for democratic citizenship. So she is helping us to develop that theme, and she is a lawyer and lecturer in law, right?
Yes.
So very warm welcome, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to everybody here. Hi, Dr. Ritu.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Ritu, could you please introduce yourself in a moment, then we can proceed further.
Yeah, sure. So I work at the University of Groningen and I teach law there. My focus areas are international law and how the national institutions and public policy actors inside a national setting understand and implement uh, the international law. So that is more or less a broad outline of my area. And with Ruchira and with the MakeShift Edu, we are trying to develop a curriculum for democratic citizenship in education, and we are thinking of how to make education more accessible to all sorts of people, and how to also make our students more responsible and more democratically aware of their rights and of their responsibilities, of their duties, and of the society around them.
How you started and became a professor in law, and like, what are your views on studies of law? I would like to hear about that.
Yeah, so, well, uh, unfortunately, I come from a privileged background and I'm a third generation lawyer
Oh.
in my family. Um, yes, and yeah, I mean, so it was either that I create my own path or I follow the family business.
Okay.
The choices were very black and white there, like our court uniform. And I did practice for almost like 10 years in trial court and district courts and even labor courts within India and the Supreme Court of India, because my family firm is an all service firm. And at one point I decided that no, I'm not really keen on arguing before a judge.
Okay.
And I would rather be talking about policy and how we can influence policies and how we can make compliance more relevant to the people around us. And that's when I go for academia. And I was a very practical person when I did that. I still remember that my father specifically was not very happy about me pursuing a master's and not joining the family business.
Okay.
But as it happens, I decided my own path, and I did my master's in Law School Bangalore, which opened up a lot of avenues for me. And I started working on policy while I was doing my master's. And then I became a Commonwealth scholar to study for doing my PhD in Edinburgh. And since then, it's been a history. now we are here, very much in academia. And yeah, and yeah, and I also discovered that I do enjoy teaching and learning environments, and, which kind of added to the charm of being in academia itself.
That's nice. So, studies of law, which is, it is only restricted to certain people because not everybody chooses to study it, one. And another thing, we do not consider that it is something very fundamental which should happen to everybody, right? As we talk about science, maths, language, and history or civics, but still, in civics also, we study about only few topics, right? Civics textbooks are always small. History textbooks are like this, and civics
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this much. So, is it intentional that we are kept away from the law, or being, on the citizenship aspect, or it is just like it is happening because of some reason, or people are just unaware about it?
So it's, I would say it's like a mix of all different reasons. Because if you remember, historically, India has had a lot of governments which have been restrictive of the rights of the citizenship, starting with the Indira Gandhi government way back almost 30 years ago. And
Yes.
so it's sort of, comes down to a mixture of all. First of all, the concentration has always been towards creating more service industry jobs, or, like making people, the professional qualification should be into science and engineering or becoming a doctor, because these are considered to be useful degrees in life in general. And and coupled with that, the fact that sometimes perhaps the governments do not want people to be aware of their rights and their
Is it?
responsibilities within the constitutional purview. And I would say definitely, because uh, if you know your rights, then you can caution a lot of things happening around you, right? So I think that consciousness comes with the study of law. The consciousness of the society around you comes with the study of law. But at the same time, how you use that consciousness, how you use that awareness, it also becomes very relevant and very
Right.
important.
Yeah.
Right. So
So even if somebody has an awareness, like we know about right to education, at least the community in education, some schools are practicing right to education because they have to, because it is a law, right? But we know about right to education, but still, practicing it is very different, and knowing about a law is very different. So, like there
now,
might,
where do you
huh,
bridge the gap?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard question again. Where do we bridge the gap? Because as you said yourself, that the schools these days, they're aware that there's Article 21A. They have to provide compulsory primary education, and governments in regional level, at the subnational level, they are very well aware of these. And the problem comes with what you can perhaps call an educational elitism,
Okay.
the right over the knowledge itself, that who actually gets to own the knowledge. And this is not just a problem with the schools or primary education within India, but it is a global sort of a problem, in the sense that anyone who owns the knowledge is more conscious, more aware, more capable of making better decisions. So your capability as a person increases with education, and to keep a society systematically away from these capabilities sort of gives more power to some people who are educated elitist in some ways,
Who are
right?
these educated elitist? But
So, like, if you look at the system in India, and I'm sorry, I'm going in that direction, but if you look at the education system in India, like when I was doing my field work in the state of Assam, I had a really hard time believing that young kids who should be there in the school were not allowed to be in the school just because they were from a different religion or they were from a different caste, which is considered lower or as an outsider or somebody who doesn't belong there. And this keeping away of this specific group of people because of their gender, caste, religion deprive them of a capability.
Okay.
While at the same time, those who are going to the school, who are allowed to be there in the learning atmosphere, they keep gaining. Their capabilities keep increasing. And that's why we are like the privileged class, because we had that opportunity to go to educational institutions without being questioned on our presence in these institutions.
So we did not feel like we were allowed to have schooling, we were allowed to get into good college, and then we were allowed to work. Like there were constraints, but then nobody questioned us, right?
Exactly.
So can we consider that as a privilege or that as a right?
It should be a right, but the society makes it treat like a privilege. Like it is, we are privileged because somebody else do not have that right. So it is like when we are talking about right, right is a capability and right is also a privilege.
Okay.
So this education that we have only for few and not for everyone, it's pretty much a privilege, but it should be a capability. It should be for everyone. It should be universally there. But we are not, we have made right as a universal education as a universal right, but we haven't been able to travel the distance to make it effectively universal for everyone. So it is still a privilege of few people who get education or a quality education even.
So this is a sensitive thing because
Yes.
because some people may get offended, you know, understanding about this, or they may not have that much understanding on this. Even myself, I have a very little understanding on these topics, so that's why I'm trying to figure out, talking to you, you know. But then let's say in India, we talk about privileged class, then they have all the rights and all the accesses also. So sometimes does it happen that because they are there, others are deprived of access? Does it
Yeah.
happen that way? Or uh, but if you tell them you get out from here, then it will be, you know,
A
curbing their
chaos as
rights.
well. Yeah, a chaos as well. So I mean, if you learn from the models outside of India, where so India is a very peculiar society in some ways, because our caste system, our religious segregation, gender misogyny is very, in some ways, very institutionalized within
Yes.
Indian way of living, way of thinking, way of creating policies even to some extent. Um, and this is something that we have to overcome with time. But then we can take lessons from outside of India. Like I am currently in Netherlands, and what happens over here is that right to education is absolutely universal. So the child is not just a ward of the parent. Like parents are not the only guardian of the child, but the state itself guardian of the child.
Okay.
So, for example, if a child is absent even for half a day from the school, even just for half a day, the state can fine the family, the parent, up to 5,000 euros. And that's a massive fine to pay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a very massive fine to pay anywhere in the world. And that is possible. And there have been cases where the parents have, taken their kids out of the school just for going on a long vacation, for example, take a Friday off or something. And they have been fined for doing that.
Seriously.
Yes, and I think this in some ways kind of affirms the necessity and the need of having a universal education for everyone. Second thing, which is very interesting in this system, is when it is for the primary school, they do not really have pressures for the papers, exam pressures.
Okay.
Right. So the learning happens in a very open atmosphere. The students are always grouped together based on their IQs. Not exactly like they don't even measure the IQ, but more like their behavior in the class.
Okay.
So they are grouped together based on their learnings and everything, and they do things together. And then the teacher is always on an assessment of if the groups need to be shuffled in between, or some of the students need to go in another group. So like for every class, they have at least three groups minimum. One is for the kids who are performing really higher than their expected level. The other is the kids who are performing as per their expected level. And then there are kids who might need some added help. Okay. And usually it is the children who are coming from outside of Netherlands, because the education is in Dutch. So these are the kids who need help with the language, for example, or, understanding of the Dutch language itself. So there are three categories like that, which is very broad and very fluid. And the kids keep moving between these categories in each school year, actually. So there can be many times that in first few months, the kid is, in a sonome way, like the higher category, and then comes out that this is going too far for them, too fast for them. So let's put them in a category which is a bit more relevant for them, and things like that. So so that happens in the primary, and then when you go to the secondary education, then every kid is assigned with a med worker, like a social worker. And the social worker, over the period of 3 years, will help our student find out what they're good at and what they're meant to do in life. And this awareness is phenomenal, because at the end of the day, in Netherlands, we have a work population which is most satisfied with its job. In some ways. Yeah, it is really phenomenal. And the student at that point, when they work with a social worker, is between 10 to 12 years of age, and they're able to make some informed decisions about their lives.
So is it because population is less and the geographical area is also, limited, and then it's a developed country? So does that make any difference, or it can be replicated in India?
So in terms of a developed country, yes, it does make a difference, because obviously the amount of GDP they spend on education is higher than what India spends on education. That doesn't mean that India cannot increase its percentage contribution to education. It should, it must. In terms of geography and population, you will be surprised to know that Netherlands is the second highest dense country in the world after Bangladesh.
Oh.
So the space is less, and the people are also quite a lot per square kilometer. Compared to that, India is very less populated if you look by the population density. Because it's just such a humongous country. But at the same time, India also has a very extensive net of social workers at the grassroots level, which came with the decentralization and through the constitutional amendment. And I think that utilizing this decentralized network with full potential is really important for India's growth in education.
Yeah. So can we come to basics again? Yeah. Can we first understand what is a right? What makes it right to be right?
So like, like now we have this constitutional right to education, but it wasn't there until a very long time. Yet there is provisions within the Indian Constitution which pertains to equality amongst all people, which pertains to the equal opportunity for everyone, for example, and India's international obligation that every person would be given a fundamental right to political and social self-determination. And how do you determine yourself? How do you have this right of political and social self-determination? Well, in a very simplistic way, you can give the right to vote to the people, and that's pretty much political self-determination. Yeah. But to be an informed citizen, to be an informed voter, you need more than that. You need to educate them. You need to create citizens who are responsible citizens. Yeah? You need to create people who are aware of who they are voting for, who are aware of what kind of leadership they are choosing. And that is why the right to education becomes so fundamental for the life of the whole nation. Because if you do not have an educated population, then you perhaps will not have a very educated leadership either. And that itself, as we know through history and through time, has been problematic.
Yes. So we are having very interesting, it's a difficult discussion to have, but it's again very, very important discussion with Dr. Ritu on rights, citizenship aspect, and right to education. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, suggestion, please put it in the comment box so that we can take it up. Dr. Ritu is leading our Education for Democratic Citizenship vertical, and you will interact with her in the learning sessions as well. She is actually developing that vertical. So we will ask her, what is citizenship? Like, why do we integrate education and citizenship? So, is the education determining what kind of citizens are we making?
So as I said, it was a kind of a double sort of thinking which we had when we started developing this vertical line of democratic citizenship. One of them was that everyone has access to education, right? Yes. So, and this access also included the fact that we need to sensitize not just the teachers and the policy makers, but also perhaps the students come from maybe a more privileged background than majority of other students in the same school, or create spaces so that it's welcoming, it's opening for everyone. Understand that an educated society is a better society, and we have to all be educated. So, and then the second point was obviously to make everyone aware of their rights and responsibilities, have a bit of a legal education in between, which is beyond the civic textbook, which is beyond, a very archaic civic syllabus in some ways, For example, with the Me Too movement, a lot of women perhaps are not even aware of their right when they're growing up. A lot of adolescent girls are not aware of their rights, what they can do, how they can approach the system. They're not aware of it. And they live with uncertainty that if they go against their perpetrators or people who have harmed them, then nothing will happen. That has to change. That has to change somewhere with the knowledge that there is a system in place and you can use the system.
So a couple of questions are there. Do we assume that institution-based education defined by state is the only education possible? Those children in India who need support in education are not aware of this.
I think that's a different question.
Two
questions, right?
So first question is, do we assume that institution-based education defined by state is the only possible education?
No, so I have a very mixed feeling about it. I know, like my co-organizer for the MakeShift itself, Megha, she deals with MOOCs, and that is an open education space where you can go and you can learn, and there's no teachers, no curriculum, nothing to follow. It's a learning-based absolutely learning-based
A free space.
education system. A free space. And it's brilliant. And in some ways, it's also very useful in India, as long as we can also, at the end of it, provide certain structures through which the people involved in these education spheres can also be employed in some form of industry. And I think that becomes really important because, for example, we did a little experiment with the legal education, paralegal education, because in the law offices, we also always have a munshi. Yeah, and we always have to train them, and then the munshi goes away and the new one comes, and then the training begins again. Okay, in a very informal way, by just sending them. It's all learning by doing kind of a process that happens. So we started in the state of Haryana. We started looking at paralegal education for the migrant worker children coming from the villages and who perhaps were unable to go to the Delhi University or other kind of continue their education beyond secondary schools or something. So we started doing more professional training with them. And at the end of it, it also allowed them to have a job opportunity and perform very nicely within their job sphere. Yeah. So technically, it still contributes towards the growth of the society as a whole. Ideologically and in my own head, I do not believe in institution or institutionalization of education at all. Learning should be free, but at the same time we have to somehow balance it between the social needs and the individual needs.
So there were problems in system. There were problems earlier in informal education system that we had, and that is because that was the reason, I think, because institutionalized education system came into picture, and then again problems were there with institutionalized system. That's why we spoke about RTE, which is right to education.
Right to education.
But again, right to education says that informal education is not allowed in India, right? Because every child has to go to school.
Has to go to the school,
So is it again problematic because some parents may not want their children to go to school?
So, in some ways, this is the right to education is also coming from the international responsibility of making everyone educated. So the fact that if you're going to the school or having an equivalent learning at home through homeschooling, has to checklist at least few things that you're able to read, you're able to write.
Okay.
In any communicable language. So that is the most fundamental role of the schools that the schools play.
Literacy.
Now it is possible that there are parents who are unable to send their children to school. And for example, a lot of nomad parents, around the world, so traveling parents, they choose to homeschool their kids. We have to see it in light of Indian demography and Indian situation. Do we have the demography which can decide not to send their kids to school and still be able to teach them reading and writing? Yeah. Okay. So if you're talking about a demography which is capable of doing that, okay. But if we are talking about a demography which do not have any means to teach their young ones to read and write, then we have to, unfortunately, send them to school.
Okay. So the second question is, those children in India who need support in education are not aware of their rights. What steps should we take for that?
A lot of it has to do with the legal awareness, which is really poor in India at this moment. As Sharwari said earlier, that most of the awareness comes from the civic textbook, which is very basic in nature, just talks about your fundamental rights and duties and perhaps an overview of the Constitution of India. I think this needs to change, and we need to also be able to talk about, for example, women right, disability right, right of the children themselves, child right, laws that we have. So, we have to also keep introducing these legislative system within the curriculum of India, of school education, as and when we get them. So, for example, for a very long time, we didn't had a law on protection of women from sexual harassment, but eventually we got it. And that was also the right time and right point in time where we could introduce it in the curriculum, saying that, okay, this is a new development that has happened. And you should also be reading about this. Yes. The same thing with POSCO, for example, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Against Children Act. It's also a very recent legislation. And I think that should be included in the curriculum. Just make children aware that they have rights.
Okay.
And it can be done in a very, very interesting way through illustration and, storytelling. And countries like Denmark, Finland, Netherlands as well, they are pretty much leading in illustrations and storytelling.
That's nice to know. That's nice to know because here, like when we were children, that time, सब लोग ये बोलते थे कि अरे तुम बच्चे हो, you don't know anything. So in that context, like still we feel that okay, बच्चा तो बच्चा है, उसको नहीं है समझ. So then if we talk about rights to children, I mean, it is a very difficult situation to visualize that you are giving agency to children to talk about their rights or decision making, and that too, it won't go with families properly, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very Indian family situation where we are not allowed to speak in front of our elders even loudly. So to bestow the agency to the child is an absolute bizarre thing to do, I think. But I think children outside of India are also very happy and very aware of their rights and their agencies and the little decisions that they can make for themselves. It only leads to creation of more responsible adults. And I think that is also changing a lot phenomenally in especially the urban India, where parents are, not just being authoritative, but more a friend of a child. And allowing their children to have more agency and more decision-making power within their lives. And then obviously they draw a set of rules saying that, okay, you can't do this. This is where the parent is the boss, or the teacher is the boss. So, but I think it is once again to do a lot with the mindset that we have as patriarchal societies.
So this mindset has to change, and after that, maybe few things may change.
So I think it's both ways, because when we talk about law and development or social development, we sort of understand very deeply that it works both ways. Sometimes the social conscious develops and it leads to creation of better laws, but most of the times it's the law which creates the society, like which pulls the society up and raises expectations from them. Like, for example, if you remember the postnatal determination act, which sort of said a no to any sort of determination prior to the birth of the child. And this also led to a better ratio between the girl and the boy child across India.
Yes. Okay. So that means sometimes law is something which is essential to change the mindset.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and I think.
So we are talking about child rights here, right? So what are the child rights? Like right to education is one thing, which is for schools, for parents, for children. But what are other child rights?
Right to safe environment, right to adequate nutrition. I mean, what right to be loved, to receive love in a parental manner. What else does a child need? basically, right? They need protection, they need adequate nutrition, they need education for an all-round development. That's all children need. And India being a signatory to the Child Right Convention itself and having a lot of this convention translated within Indian national jurisprudence is pretty well equipped when it comes to child rights. What we lack is the compliance of them. What we lack is a society which agrees or which sees values in these laws. So and I think a lot of like as they say, charity begins at home. So I think a lot of the compliance need and a lot of the need of how to make the environment more protective, safe, and learning able for the children comes from the children knowing what their rights are. Comes from the children being aware of the legal institution created for them. And then we can of course find loopholes within the legal system as well, and we can say, okay, we need perhaps more laws and more systems, but as long as we are unable to focus on compliance or to improve the compliance, any kind of law that we'll bring in, any new law which we'll bring in, will also be as big a failure as our previous laws are. So we really need to improve our compliance and our understanding of the law, and that's the law.
Okay, so let's say child is aware of their laws, like right to protection, like right to love. What steps can child take? Like if they are deprived of the rights, then what happens?
Yeah, that's a very big question, huh? Because I mean, in this scenario, none of the countries in the world is a perfect example to say that every child is taken care of, every child is loved. That is a very utopian idea, and unfortunately, there is no such example in the present day global world where this is possible. But what is absolutely possible is to give education to every child. Yeah, that is possible, and that is possible because a lot of countries do have that. But to say that okay, every child should be loved, that's a very, very utopian ideas, because there could be parent itself who are caring but not loving. Yeah, who might be able to provide for the children, give them education and everything, but may not be loving parents.
No, but if child is deprived of education, is there a provision that child can take, like child can report it somewhere, or like what can they do?
Definitely, because there's like what I said, that at the decentralized network, there's this whole network of social workers, which are usually attached to every school, and also the teachers themselves being a part of this network of social workers. Because Article 21A says that it is a fundamental right, and if a child is not in the school and the child says to an adult that I'm not in the school, this adult has a responsibility to make sure that this child goes to the school. Yeah, we do not have any major penal provisions that I'm aware of in India that can make it happen. There is definitely this ethical, moral, constitutional responsibility that we have as an adult to make sure every child goes to the school. So, but yeah, I mean, it will be really nice to actually have laws which says that, find the adults which are not able to keep the kids in the school, or find the social worker actually, or the panchayat where there is more school dropouts and things like that. Because we have to also understand that in India, finding a parent is perhaps not a solution.
Not a solution.
Because of the level of poverty that might be there, right?
Yes,
and that's
definitely.
why we had programs like school meals and Akshapatra and all these programs just to encourage school enrollment. But then at the same time, if we make it a village oriented collective sort of a, collective responsibility at the village level or at the panchayat level, then you have a person over there as well, a village headman, for example, which is a constitutional post, or a panchayat of the sarpanch, which is again a constitutional post, where you can locate the responsibility and where you can say, okay, students, children from your panchayat or your village were not going to school. What have you done about it? And if they haven't done anything about it, then we can bring them to a constitutional responsibility, fining them or, cutting their program money or things like that. So it is possible to penalize it in some ways.
So what are the laws available apart from right to education? What are other different laws about education?
So right to education is the most phenomenal constitutional right which is there, right? Other than that, it is coming from the Child Right Convention that every children has the right to education. The education policy which has been there and which hasn't really been updated every few years, because the first policy came in 68, then the next one was 92, and now the recent one. So it's been very disparate in some ways. So it also kind of shows us that the government is not so focused on making sure that educational needs are met. Governments, like all the governments so far in some ways, right? And other than that, there is not really any fundamental legal premise which says that the education should be there for everyone.
So RT is the only law.
RT is in some ways is the only right to education. Under 21A is the only.
Okay. And
only law, and that is, I think that is sufficient as well, because it's constitutional right. It's a fundamental basic right.
Okay. But there are so many beautiful things in curriculum frameworks or national education policy, but they are again policy decisions, right? They are not laws. So could you just elaborate on what is the difference between a policy decision and a law, which is
so like let's take it from here. So 21A came, after that came your RTE, right? So in a hierarchy, 21A, it's a part of the fundamental rights, and within that fundamental right is embedded the right to education. And then you brought a Right to Education Act to tease out every little component of that right, that what does this right entail. And then from this act will come out a set of bylaws, principles, policies, departmental policies, administrative orders, which will be all in some ways pursuing this right to education. Like how do you appoint the teacher, for how long do you appoint the teacher, what should be the qualifications for the teacher, etc., etc. So this all should in some ways be pursuant to 21A, meeting the objectives of 21A. And in as much as it meets the objective of 21A and it's not derogative of any other fundamental rights, it's a valid law. So for example, if tomorrow a school employs somebody who's not having a minimum teacher qualification, or there are two candidates, one of them has a minimum teacher qualification, the other one doesn't. The one who doesn't gets an employment, the one who has doesn't get an employment. So there would be eventually a court case about this. So the court will treat the bylaw or the procedural law on appointment of the teacher as a legal framework. So the law is not just in some ways limited to the act, it's the overarching thing, but within that act there'll be procedures, administrative orders, etc., etc. Like even to the order of like if for example the state governments make a administrative decision on use of a vernacular language, like the three three-language thing that Indian education policy has. That itself creates a legal basis. So if there's a student who is deprived of three languages in a school, they can go to the court and say that their rights have been violated.
Okay. So policy decisions, they are not really enforceable, right? They are implementable. They are.
It depends on the nature of the policy decision, because policy decisions are actually what give effect to the right in the real sense. Yeah. So they are pretty much enforceable in as long as it depends a lot on the case-to-case basis as well sometimes, but they are pretty much enforceable. They're not outside the law.
Okay. So this has become very technical conversation. Let's make it lighter now.
So let me just say that policy decisions are a part of the administrative law. Okay, and administrative law is as much enforceable in the court of law as any other law. And in fact, majority of the court cases that happens outside of marital discords and the land disputes is administrative law cases.
Okay.
So yeah.
But is there a law talking about curriculum or something, what to teach and how to teach? So, RT talks a little bit about that.
Yeah, RT talks a little bit about curriculum and all, and you have a set of fundamental duties which is not enforceable, unfortunately, and which talks about the scientific temperament, the development of the scientific temperament. But the courts are also free to read it within the purview of 21A actually, and say that scientific temperament forms a part of the fundamental rights, if the court wishes to, for example. But yeah, it is possible to argue it within the purview of 21A.
Okay. So now it was about law and access and rights. Now let's talk about citizenship. As with education, how are you visualizing citizenship, and what steps can we take? Because you are leading citizenship vertical, so I would like you to talk about that.
Yeah, so so one of the key things that we wanted to do was allow the students to determine their own curriculum in some ways, bring up their own problems from the society that they are living in, and think of them in terms of the legal framework, how those problems can perhaps already be solved within the given legal framework. If there is no legal framework, what else can we do? Yeah, because we are not parliamentarians, so we can't, create a law right away. But we can do other things, and how we can use that information that we have outside of law that we can use to solve those problems. And in some way, it is we are transferring the agency to the students themselves. We are making them aware that it's your education, it's your
be responsible towards your own education.
Yeah, it's possible for you to be responsible for your own self. Be responsible, be a true citizen and not just a bystander, and be also a citizen of your local area, and come to us, determine a problem that you have in your local areas, and let's try to solve it, or at least put our heads together on how we can solve it. Yeah.
So that's about children, when children is visualizing citizenship.
Yes.
Let's say adult who is into teaching profession, or a parent, or somebody who wants to get into education through next Eduthon. Then how can they visualize citizenship as a part of education? Or let's say with education, how can you create next generation citizens?
So I think the same way that how we are seeing the things that allow the children to have the agency, give them the knowledge that they have the agency, that they can make their own decisions. Yeah, and perhaps be with us on the other side of this Eduthon and help us as well think through on how to mentor and guide these young citizens of the country to solve their local problems.
Yeah.
So we're
So
going vocal for local, huh?
लोकल के लिए वोकल तो हम जा रहे हैं, लेकिन सिटीजनशिप अभी तक सब लोग टेक्नोलॉजी के पीछे भाग रहे हैं, लेकिन सिटीजनशिप एक बहुत बड़ा टॉपिक है जो हमें लेना चाहिए हाथ में. Why should why should only authorities talk about citizenship? It's citizen is me, you, Ritu, we are all citizens, right? And we should be talking about citizenship development more than the authorities. They are citizens.
Exactly.
They are
like it's very interesting for everyone to know here. I hope that in India, citizenship is situated. In the rest of the world, it's a legal document which gives you your citizenship. In India, almost 48% of people do not have that legal document. Their citizenship is situated in the area they live in the house they belong to, in the family they belong to, the sarpanch who knows them, or the village gambura who knows them. Yeah. So this situated citizenship makes it really abundantly gives you an abundant responsibility in some ways to be a responsible citizen of the place where you're situated. In some ways, yeah. But, so to bridge that gap of knowledge and
can we talk about little more controversial thing?
Yes, sure.
You said citizenship is situated. Okay, to be a citizen of the place you are in, right? Okay, so I'm a married woman. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's say society is visualizing that a married woman should have these many responsibilities, and her basic responsibility and right is to take care of the family, take care of the kitchen, let's say take care of the surrounding, but let's say not about being vocal or being a problem solver herself. Yeah.
That's
or
the patriarchal problem,
be a thinker, or just be an activist. So it is not acceptable when it is viewed at large. I'm not saying that my family is not accepting it. They are kind of okay with it. They see that okay, she is doing some different kind of work, but then what about other women? What about other children? Like they are pushed into engineering, or let's say they are and so how do we look at citizenship then? Being in a place.
I think in some ways it brings us back to what we were discussing about agency and the the nature of agency, and perhaps also the movie Thappad. In some ways, right? So it's a recent one. So and the fact that the Indian families are not yet absolutely ready to give this agency to their children to decide for themselves, to make their own responsible choices. And I think that is what needs to change. And it's not necessary that we have to wait for 10 years, 20 years, or a whole generation to change. We can change it already with the law and policy and a bunch of sensitized social workers and students. Yeah, so it's everything is possible to change, right? That's always our hope.
Ritu, sensitization is one topic that we are going to deal with, right?
Yes.
So sensitization of whom?
Yeah, so in sensitization, we are going to deal with social sensitization and gender sensitization. In the gender sensitization, we are obviously talking about the equality between the two genders, the men and women. and obviously the whole history of the movement and why this is important and how it is also changing in different countries and how it's beneficial. Like for example, if you look at Finland and other and Denmark, which are the top human development index countries, they have paternal leaves which can be taken equally between husband and wife.
Wow.
Yeah, and the funny part is that especially in Norway, if you do not take, if a father doesn't take paternal leave, it's considered a little negative.
Oh.
Yeah, so that you're not loving parent, sort of a way. So
okay, that's great to know.
yeah,
That's great to know.
and this change is not something which has happened, which has taken very long. It actually happened very swiftly, just by introducing equal parenting leave, equal parental leave, and by doing some media campaigns about why it's important for fathers to be loving to their children. Yeah. So it didn't take long for them to have this mindset that if you do not, as a father, take time off for your child, then you're not a loving parent and perhaps not responsible enough in your office. So
there's a question. Children are away from education because of financial conditions. So how can we solve this problem? I think
so I think most of the primary education within India is free, of course, right?
Yeah.
Probably. And also there is an incentive with the midday meal program. So I think for the primary education, the financial condition is not that much of a constraint. But what is of a constraint is the families being aware that they have to send their kids to school and perhaps lose a labor salary, you know, because children are also employed. 10 million, I think, children are in labor sector in India.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in some ways a very fitting answer to all of this might be just the universal basic income idea, which UNDP has been toying with for quite some time now.
Yes.
That they want to introduce a universal basic income model, and I think even MG Narega, the rural employment guarantee policy in India, was also in some ways built towards the same direction, that, you know, if you have at least 100 days of guaranteed labor employment, and then this will allow you to at least have the basic financial needs, and you won't have to employ your kids into any sort of labor industry. But yeah, obviously child labor is prohibited in India, and there needs to be a strict compliance on that. One of the major problems comes with homelessness, because when there's homelessness and the children are on the street, then it's hard to find out who is responsible for the child and where the compliance should rest. Yeah, so these are definitely structural issues which are there, but as far as it depends on how we can change the education policy, well, it's already free. It already provides you a midday meal.
Yes.
So now the focus has to be more towards the social and the compliance of that policy.
Yes.
The policy itself, right?
Right. So it was amazing to discuss about really hard topics. I am building my
I remember you
understanding
telling me let's not be very controversial.
So the problem with coffee conversation, it's not a problem. I like that thing actually. It's always controversial.
Yeah, cheers to that. Huh?
Yes, I don't have coffee today. But let me make an announcement. I have an announcement to make. We are extending our deadline for next Eduthon till 20th. So don't worry, participants who have already registered, you do not miss on anything. You will not fall short of time. We will be telling you the detailed timeline in 2-3 days, so that you will understand that, okay, you have got enough sessions and you have enough things, enough days to build your prototypes. But this gives chance to others who haven't yet applied to apply for the program. and yes, we are talking about access here. So
yes, yeah, we want to give you as much access as possible, and also the fact that you made the program free, of course, I was very happy about that. So yeah.
Great. So thanks, Ritu, and thank you everybody who is watching here. We will come up with a lot of, beyond textbook, beyond civics textbook, or beyond history textbook things in citizenship theme. Do take this theme very, very seriously, because that's what define us as a country, right? So please, if you haven't thought of applying to that theme, I would personally request you to apply for citizenship development theme, because democracy is, we are living in a democratic country and we are citizens of it. So who else should think about citizenship then, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is our country, it's what we make out of it.
Exactly. Law is a guardian, but ultimately we have to make it out. Yeah?
We as a citizen, yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, the law, the society, the nation, it's all basically some collective of our ideologies and our thinking.
Yeah, and government too needs support from us.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, the institutions like legal institution, then media or police, they also need from us, especially in this particular time, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think there was a question on Facebook. I really like that question. Do you mind if I answer it?
Oh, I am so sorry. I think
No,
I
it's
missed
okay.
that question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think Liz Johnson, she asked about whether there should be a necessity to make 3-language compulsory in the school because of the first education policy, which kind of puts Hindi, English, and a regional language. And the idea behind it was obviously to make Hindi a linked language, use English as a linked language till the time Hindi becomes a linked language, and have the regional language. And I don't agree with this philosophy. I mean, it's nice if the children are bilingual or trilingual. It's always good for their development, but education should be in the regional language, in the vernacular language. And our vernacular language industry really lags behind in some ways.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, over here, in most of the Europe, every English novel which gets published is translated and is available in local language for the people to read.
Ritu, how do you solve this problem in India? Because it's such a huge country and we have like
because we
official
haven't
languages,
given
so many official languages. So
I know, but we have at least 28 bigger languages, which we call the state languages. 28 or 32 now. I don't quite remember, but somewhere in between. And there are people who write literature in that language, and there are people who are capable of translating the already existing textbooks and literature into that language. But we haven't given enough attention to this group of actors, of writers, who can, in a very positive way, contribute towards education, not just by writing new novels, but also through translations, through
I agree, but then I have a point here, because I studied in vernacular language. I did my schooling in Marathi, and after that I faced a lot of problem when I was transitioning from 10th to 11th. But now
because of the CBSE boards because the board being in either Hindi or English. Was it because of that?
So in Maharashtra, science was available only in English. But I unfortunately I left Maharashtra that time and I went to Delhi, and that was CBSE. So there was a board gap also. But the problem is, whoever studies till 10th standard in Marathi, after that transition is there, from Marathi to English as first language, and that is problematic.
Yeah. So what happens over in Germany, Netherlands, and all the Nordic countries is that they do the primary education specifically in the vernacular language because the kids are more comfortable with that, small children. And then when they're 8 or 9 years old, they introduce the next language.
Okay.
And then, and then the children are free to choose. They have to, at the end of their schooling, they have to do 4 languages together. But then they're free to choose. So one of them has to be English. Then they go to German if they're not in Germany, but other parts, French, Spanish could be an optional. So then they keep adding the optional languages on top of it.
Okay.
In the secondary education.
Then the language has to, they should teach language as a language. Otherwise, I studied English as a subject, and that was a problem, I think.
So no, then they actually teach language as a language with like phonetics and everything into how to build it and stuff. So yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's a good model to replicate in India as well, given the needs of India. And
okay. Thanks, Ritu. Thank you, everyone. Tomorrow we'll come up with a new topic again. And so registration deadline has been extended. You can register till 20th, but we won't be extending it further. Okay. 20th is 20 June is the deadline. Okay. Thanks, Ritu. Ritu will be taking few more sessions with us on citizenship theme. And we are bringing in.
You will see me again and again.
Many times.
Yeah. Sorry.
This was just an introduction. Actually, this goes with all the experts. Great. So thanks, Ritu. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. Tomorrow we meet at 5 again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.